Hi, everybody. I'm James Stavridis, the Dean of the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy in Medford, Massachusetts. It is a gorgeous early November afternoon, and I'm here with one of our most distinguished alumni, and that would be Sean Callahan, who is the CEO, the Chief Executive Officer of Catholic Relief Services. Big organization, an important one. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Sean is here today for a conference we are conducting on religious literacy, kind of the importance of religion, diplomacy, and law as they kind of thread together. So we'll talk a bit about that as well. But I want to begin, Sean, by just saying how proud we are of you as a Fletcher graduate. And of course, you are what we call in the trade a double jumbo.
Double jumbo, that's right.
Tufts undergrad, Fletcher grad. Why Tufts? Why Fletcher? How did you end up as one of our absolute most distinguished alums?
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm not sure I'm one of the most distinguished, but I appreciate the compliment. When I was looking at schools, I didn't know what I wanted to do when I got into college, and so I ended up choosing Tufts because of the various graduate schools it had. I thought it gave me a good avenue to check out the different graduate scene at that time. My father had been a doctor and went to Tufts Medical School, and I thought, oh, maybe there's an opportunity there. But then, as an undergrad, I went to Spain. Spent a year in Spain during a time when NATO was being hotly debated, and happened to be in Spain during La Noche Larga, when the military took over, Tejero actually took over the parliament, and it was a challenging time, and I realized I had been operating in a very small circle, and I thought, I need to break out of that circle, and I thought Fletcher would provide me that opportunity.
Fabulous. And of course, the moment you are referring to was then overcome by the current King of Spain in a very heroic moment, I think, and one that had religion kind of threaded through it as well. What did you study at Fletcher, Sean?
Fletcher, I studied public diplomacy in the Western Hemisphere, and it was actually one of those funny things. When I graduated, people said, wow, you actually did something that you studied in, because I went down and worked early on in Nicaragua during a difficult time down there. So got to use my Western Hemisphere skills as well as public diplomacy and dealing with the Sandinista regime and trying to balance the relationship there with development actors, the local church, and the United States.
Habla usted español, por supuesto.
Claro, claro que sí.
Creo que es muy importante este momento en nuestro país de habla español, porque 15% de nuestra población habla español por su primer idioma.
Sí. Absolutamente, absolutamente. Y más bien para nosotros, como una institución de la Iglesia Católica ya es medio católico, y los jóvenes más bien. Sí.
Well, I think that you obviously have managed to take the skills you've developed and put them to direct use in the world, which at the end of the day is what we treasure about the Fletcher experience. And now you've been at CRS, Catholic Relief Services, for 30 years. Tell us a little about the organization. It must be an incredible place to work.
It really is. It's a fantastic place to work. We work in over 112 countries, reaching 120 million people throughout the world. And really our mission is to help people respect the human dignity of others around the world, really. And we do that through various ways of promoting that economically, socially, and culturally, and try to help in the development of people in all the countries throughout the world, particularly those that are fragile countries and those in crisis.
Yeah. And what's the budget? It's nudging up north of $700 million a year?
Actually, this past year we broke over $900 million, so we're actually approaching $1 billion that we invest annually to reach these different populations around the world.
And what's the financial model? Where does the funding come from?
We leverage almost 4 or 5 to 1. We have private donations that come into the organization from just concerned American citizens, and then we leverage that with U.S. government, the Global Fund, UN, other governments, and we also combine that with our European colleague agencies that do outreach around the world as well.
So let me ask the obvious question. Do you take funding from the Roman Catholic Church?
We actually do collections in the Roman Catholic Church, so the constituents of the people in the pews actually give to us, but we don't get any from the Vatican or others. Actually, the U.S. is a church that gives towards the Vatican and also. But we do get collections through the church, and we try to use the church as a mobilization force on the influential voice here in the United States, because we feel the way that we respect human dignity, the way we reach out to people, the way we strengthen local communities and partnerships is something that we should do more of in the United States.
Completely agree, and that's so well said. One of the formative experiences as you came along through this career, and I feel like I'm talking to another military guy, you know, you're one of the few people who, like me, has spent decades in one organization. Mine was out at sea, yours was ashore mostly. But I'm told that you had a chance to work with Mother Teresa, of course now Saint Teresa. Tell us about that.
You know, it was a fantastic opportunity. Working in Calcutta at that time, where you had 3 million people living in the streets, 1 million of them children.
Sure.
And Mother was someone who had great energy. She wasn't someone, you know, you'd think very small figure, but very passionate, very strong figure, and a very joyful figure. And I think she taught me 3 big things. One was about poverty, and that there's both poverty that's economic and poverty inside of us, and that we need to look for both of those in people and see how we can release them from that curse of poverty. The second thing was humility. She did things with great humility. I complimented her once and said, "Mother, we're so lucky to be able to work with you." And she said, "Shh, you know, don't spoil it." She said, "I'm the lucky one to be with God's children," you know. And so that type of inspiration to hear that. But then thirdly was boldness. There wasn't a problem that she didn't think she could attack and conquer. And so I think she opened up my eyes that we're only limited by our imagination. And so if we can follow her path, we can do great things.
Wow, boy, as you described her, she sounds like an incredible leader in so many ways.
She was, and had a tremendous sense of humor, joy. And I also had the opportunity of working with the Dalai Lama in Dharamsala in India at the time. And both, I think, of these great leaders and religious figures had this joy that was just ever present.
Yeah, I have not met St. Teresa, but I've met the Dalai Lama several times, and he strikes me as a very jolly man. And I think that good humor is a fundamental characteristic of good leaders.
Exactly.
Not always do you see it, but when it's there, it becomes seminal in their ability to inspire others.
It certainly is. I, in my own mind, think of him very affectionately as the laughing Buddha,
yeah,
because
exactly.
he has that great,
he
jolly
really
laugh
does.
when he...
So back to the slums of Calcutta. Have you read this marvelous book by Catherine Boo? It's called Behind the Beautiful Forevers.
I haven't read it.
It's a marvelous book, and just in the context of this conversation, Catherine Boo is a journalist, and she goes into the slums of India and spends 2 years there. And it's a nonfiction book, but it reads like a novel. It is a marvelous work of art, and it is the title, Behind the Beautiful Forevers, comes from the fact that as you drive toward this particular slum, there are advertising, billboards about, please come join us in our beautiful new spacious condominium towers called the Beautiful Forevers. Behind those beautiful forevers was the most abject poverty in the world. That's where CRS lives, and that's why you're such a profoundly important organization. I do want to say to everybody that we're also today going to give Sean Callahan the Dean's Medal. We give maybe 1 or 2 of those away a year. You'll join a long list of wonderful people, and I know your mother is going to be there to watch it, and we're hoping your daughter Sahana, who is a freshman here at Tufts, will be there as well. You do us proud. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You bet. All the best.